The heart of the matter is this. Wherever there is the archetype of the ideal woman, or what I call the myth of the ideal woman, within ourselves that is unchecked, there is a sense of unworthiness and inadequacy. Hey everyone, I'm Thais Sky. Welcome to Reclaim, a podcast for women by women on conversations that matter. Hello everybody. Thais Sky here. Welcome to Reclaim, the podcast. I'm doing something different today and this week. I'm going to be releasing 5 episodes in a row where we're going to be exploring worthiness. It's called the Reclaiming Worth series. I hope you're up for it. This episode is called Getting to the Heart of the Matter. So let's talk about why I'm doing this. First off, doors are currently open for my group program, Worthy Women Rise. This is my signature 4-month program. I've been leading this program every year for almost 3 years now. So this will be my 5th time running this group. And the program is all about learning how to stay with yourself, how to explore the shadow side of your heart, and how to deepen your capacity to be with all that is within you, including the worthiness wound, so that you can show up in a greater way in the world. This program is for smart, sensitive, soulful women who are tired of running away from their shit. They're ready to start looking at the real challenges that they're facing in their lives and find tools that are going to radically transform their capacity to be resilient, to be emotionally available for their lives. I find that the results of this program has led women to not only make more money and get, promotions and all of these kind of external things, but really find a sense of sovereignty within herself, a sense of freedom. It's a freedom to know that you can handle whatever life comes your way, that things aren't as scary. What's amazing about doing the deeper inner work is that things stop being so goddamn scary. We actually grow up. And by that I mean that little girl within us that's like terrified of everything, we're able to tend to her and nurture to her in a way that allows her to mature into the beautiful adult that you feel so competent in being like 80% of the time, right? So if you're interested in learning more about Worthy Women Rise, you can go to worthywomenrise.com. I'm currently accepting applications, and applications are coming in every day. There are spots limited, so if you're interested, I highly, highly encourage you to go check that out as soon as possible. But because the doors are now open for Worthy Women Rise, I decided, you know what? I'm talking about worthiness a lot in my life right now, and because of this launch, so why not create a little series of the questions and challenges that I know many of us are navigating when it comes to worthiness, as a way to support you on your journey of worth. So you may be thinking, okay, but hold on, who are you to be talking about worthiness? Well, that is a great question. Worthiness is something that has been a part of my life since as long as I can remember. And by worthiness, you know what I'm talking about. I mean unworthiness, feeling inadequate, feeling not enough. I vividly remember feeling like I didn't get the guidebook of life. Like everyone else got this amazing resource of like how to handle their shit except for me. And I felt so broken all the time, but I didn't know it. Instead, how that was playing out was I was binge eating. I pushed away anything good in my life. I was emotionally manipulative. I was addicted to all sorts of things, not necessarily substances, but behaviors that were leading me into these spirals of just complete annihilation. And it got to the point where I got tired of my shit. I got tired of not looking at it. And that was when I began my journey of doing inner work. And by inner work, you know what I'm talking about, right? Inner work, like looking at the instability in my life and deciding that if there's something that I can change within myself, maybe it will help me translate that out into different areas of my life. So I started the journey, and for me as an atheist at the time, it started as Buddhism. So I started to explore Buddhism, and I started to explore yoga, and I was finding tools that were helping me. They were helping me save me from drowning, because many times during that period of my life, I felt like I was drowning. But then I wanted to go deeper, because that sense of worthiness was still plaguing my life. Sure, I was finding changes in my behavior. Sure, things were changing outside, but I was tired of constantly feeling like I had to prove myself. I was tired of feeling like I had to be like this perfect person in order for anybody to like me. I was tired, peoples. I was tired of putting on a facade in order for the world to see me as palatable. And that's when I began to do some deep research into what is worthiness. What is it? And I found that not a lot of people are talking about it. People are talking about worthiness as if it's like a thing that we all have to have. Couldn't agree more. Feeling worthy is a great tool against our patriarchal system, right? Feeling worthy allows us to be more conscientious about how we spend our money and how we do our things. Like feeling worthy is important as entrepreneurs and charging the rates that we charge, etc., etc. Feeling worthy is so important. And yet nobody was talking about how. How do we feel worthy? All that I saw online about worthiness was you just got to have a mindset. Just believe in yourself. Just believe that you're worthy. Just repeat to yourself over and over and over again, I am worthy. And then guess what? You'll be worthy. Woo! Easy peasy. But that wasn't working for me. And I have a feeling it doesn't really work for anybody. It may give you like this drop of courage, but I don't want a drop of courage. I want to be courageous. So I began to do my research, and I was working with a lot of women at the time who were going through the same experience as me. And so together, I really looked at, okay, what is this sense of unworthiness? And how can we start to navigate it? And I created a model that I called the worthiness wound. The worthiness wound model is an exploration of that space of inadequacy and how we can begin to navigate moving away from the worthiness wound. And so the model helps us to construct and understand meaning around how we got this thing within us to begin with, and then how we can move out of this thing. And I've been teaching this model for 2 years now, and I've seen such tremendous shifts in the women that I work with in not only deepening their ability to be with themselves, right? To that type of self-acceptance and self-love that goes beyond just the bubble, the bath bubbles or whatever, but also lifelong tools for how to navigate inadequacies and feelings of unworthiness in the future. Because one thing is clear, while our society is the way it is, I don't foresee a woman being quote unquote worthy, like as a destination. I don't see worthiness as a destination. It's more like the journey of unworthiness is the journey back home to ourselves, is how I see that. And I'll go into it in greater depth later. But anyway, so this is where I'm at now, where I've become this self-proclaimed expert. I've been doing the research and the work of really unpacking how we can navigate our unworthiness and how we can move into a space where that's no longer debilitating us. I asked all of you on my Instagram story, what area of your life are you most struggling to feel worthy about? And I got so many amazing answers. I got feeling too old to just be starting life at 38, standing in my truth that I'm right a lot of the time and not acquiescing. In my community, it's hard for me to feel like I'm needed and welcome, feeling competent at work, my work/career, so a lot of that, parenting, the fear of pushing myself past it. Definitely my body, I can't seem to shake that if I'm not beautiful enough, I'm not worthy enough that I know enough, feeling like I know enough and that I'm getting too old. So this is all of us. We're all navigating this together. And there are ways that we can begin to approach looking at these things that's kind of radical in the industry, but I've also seen to be really, really instrumental in helping us to reach a new level of understanding of ourselves. And that's what we're going to explore for these 5 days. I'm going to just be sharing with you my thoughts and feelings and ideas and tools for how we can start to demystify worthiness, make it more palatable and understandable, make it so that you can move forward and feel like, I got this. I can navigate this. Like maybe I don't have to be so debilitated in my sense of inadequacy. The heart of the matter is this. Wherever there is the archetype of the ideal woman, or what I call the myth of the ideal woman, within ourselves that is unchecked, there is a sense of unworthiness and inadequacy. So what do I mean by the myth of the ideal woman? Well, the myth of the ideal woman is a cultural myth of how we should be as women in order for us to receive the love that we want, in order for us to feel like we belong. So culture tells us, like especially around the new year, right, that the last year version of you is inadequate, it's lacking, it needs to be fixed. And so the solution is, well, if you just pour time, money, energy, and resources into perfecting yourself, then our patriarchal culture will reward you. It will reward you with the pay raise. It will reward you with respect. It will reward you with this sense of belonging. Really, it's all about belonging. Our culture perpetuates the myth of the ideal woman because it wants us to stay hungry. Because if we are constantly looking outside of ourselves for this ideal version of ourselves, and as we internalize that and then work hard to achieve that, well, then we're going to be spending money. And that's very good for our capitalistic system. We will feel inadequate and unworthy, which then allows other people to take our place. And that's great for our democratic system. Women don't belong on this world. And by that, I mean the structures and systems that built this world were built for white men by white men, not for us. And so the myth of the ideal woman is tantalizing because we believe, oh, if only I was like this, then I will be happy. Then I will have all my goals reached. Then I will be perfect. Then nothing bad can ever happen to me. But really what it's doing is it's keeping us in the rat race where we're deeply miserable, unhappy, we're depressed, we're suicidal, we're dieting and starving ourselves, we're spending a fortune on clothes and beauty products and makeup and all of the ways in order for us to stay distracted from the real work, which is to live our purpose, to take up space, to speak, to be a person in this world. The myth of the ideal woman is tantalizing, but it's a lie. It's a lie. Wherever she lies within you, wherever you have internalized the myth of the ideal woman, I promise you that is where you will find a deeply entrenched worthiness wound. It may be parenting because the myth of the ideal mother is deep within us. It can be the myth of the ideal worker. You know, women just got the privilege of working a 9-to-5 job. Like, this is still new to us. And corporate culture was, again, not created for women. This idea of the 40-hour work week, can I just say, the 40-hour work week was constructed on the assumption that the man had a woman to go home to. So 40 hours is works if one partner stays at home to take care of the house and the children, which is another full-time job. But the 40-hour work week didn't change to accommodate the fact that now women weren't staying at home. And so now we're expected to work 40 hours and then to come home and take care of the house and take care of our children. Now, luckily, I feel like culture is slowly shifting to increase the role of fatherhood in the home. But the pressure still lies predominantly on the burden, on the shoulder of women. So the myth of the ideal worker is a new myth, but it is insidious. And what it's telling us is the ideal corporate woman, right, is that you have to be perfectly able to balance your full-time job with childcare responsibilities. And because women are quote unquote great at multitasking, nothing's off limits. And if you're struggling, it means that you are inadequate. Right? That's the myth. That is the myth. The myth is this beautiful ideal, and wherever you do not live up to this ideal, you are inadequate. And so what we tend to do is we tend to work harder to reach the ideal. We work harder and harder, and we allow that inadequacy to burn in us this hunger, this rage to be better people, because once we achieve the pinnacle of success, everything that we were promised is given to us. I promise you, that is a lie. I feel like I'm saying the same thing over and over again, but I think it's important to just drill it in. the myth of the ideal woman is a prison. So I would love for you right now, I'm assigning homework here. I would love for you to spend some time breaking down your different identities, like the different roles that you play in your life. Maybe you're the wife, the mother, the caretaker, maybe you're the worker. Whatever identities you have in your life, I want you to make a list underneath each of those identities, what the ideal version of that identity is that you've internalized. Okay? I want you to really make that list nice and exhaustive. And if you need some ideas, I wrote a blog post called The Myth of the Ideal Woman, where I break down 3 different identities: the ideal stay-at-home woman, the ideal corporate woman, and the ideal entrepreneurial woman. And it's a great list. I had a lot of fun writing it. For example, under the ideal stay-at-home woman, I wrote, is so efficient with her schedule that she has an abundance of free time to self-care, have brunch with girlfriends, pick up the kids on time, and still manages to have dinner ready by the time her partner gets home. Oh, and did we mention the glorious sex she has with her partner every night? She aims to please. It's funny, but it's very sad. So you can go and get some ideas of what I'm talking about in terms of the myths, but I really also want you to sit down and think about, like, what have you internalized as the ideal woman? You can even Google it. Just Google images of ideal woman and you will notice like, wow, this is what it means. It means to be white, to be skinny, to be upper middle class. It means to be heterosexual, right? To be with a husband that's a beautiful looking man. It's really, really interesting. But anyway, so we are pushed these messages of what it means to be the ideal woman from a very early age. And one thing is abundantly clear. One thing is the truth of the matter is that there are qualities that are okay, that are acceptable, that align, that we have, that align with the ideal woman. Maybe you're a very kind person. Great, that's an alignment. But then there are qualities in ourselves that are not acceptable. Qualities that, like, if we exhibit them, risks our entry into this exclusive club. And so because we want to be in a state of belonging, we want to be accepted, we want to be liked, we want to be validated, we want to be a part of the cool club, we cultivate a split. This is what I call it anyway, a split. And it happens early in our childhood. And what happens is we basically stuff the unacceptable parts of ourselves down. We, like, at a very early age, very unconsciously, we just stuff it down. We say, nope, there's no space for that in my life. And now what happens is we've created a disconnect. We've disconnected ourselves from a vital part of who we are, which is our wholeness, which is our humanity. And that disconnect makes our experience of life more constrained because now we can't stand to see these traits exhibited by other people. So we're like constantly pushing everybody else away because we can't stand to recognize that there's parts of ourselves that we've stuffed down. And so inevitably we find ways to numb. We find ways to numb through our culture with socially acceptable things like drinking, and eating chocolate and going on binge spends on binge spending and like spending money on clothing. We find ways to numb ourselves because it's so painful to really be with who we are. Yeah, does that resonate? This is really painful, and it's happening on a deep psychological level for all of us. The thing is, like I've been saying, this idea that our wildness, that our humanity, that our existence is supposed to be conformed to this ideal myth, it's a lie. It's a lie. And of course it leads us to feeling broken and inadequate. What it does develop is what I call the good girl complex, where because we've stuffed down the unacceptable parts, we decided we're going to be very good girls. This is where white women have unconsciously signed at the dotted line with white men that they're not going to acknowledge white supremacy in the ways that they participate because they would rather be the good girl and be accepted by patriarchy and by men than to look at the ways that they're complicit in upholding a system of oppression that marginalizes people of color. Yeah, so that's where this plays along. The good girl complex is a result of the split, and now we're only gonna be good girls. We're gonna be quiet. We're gonna keep our head down. We're not gonna be too rowdy. We're gonna be skinny and starving, and then we'll get into the cool club. And so for many of us, we believe that that's who we are. This is what's so wild. We believe that we are the good girls. We believe that we are good people. We're good liberal women. But there's this like little sense of inadequacy, right? There's this little sense of, I don't know. I think this good girl thing is exhausting. I think this good girl thing is actually keeping me really stuck and small. I think this good girl thing is preventing me from really speaking my truth and standing up tall and standing for justice and fighting with my sisters. I think this good girl complex is a prison. Well, I invite us, all of us, to escape our prison. It's time for us to release the good girl complex. And we start that by being willing to look at the myth of the ideal woman. We begin by recognizing that maybe there is a place within us that doesn't feel so good, that does feel inadequate. We begin by acknowledging that our wildness, our vastness is available to us. It may take some time. We may have to spend more time unpacking it than we would like, right? We kind of are taught that we want things right away. It's not going to happen right away, but I promise it is possible. It is so possible for us to be our wildly human, imperfect self and not have this constant nagging that we're a fraud, that we're broken, that we don't belong. Right? This is the journey of our belonging. This is our homecoming journey. And that's why I love talking about the worthiness wound. Because this shadow side of ourselves is the key. Seeing where we are inadequate and unworthy is not it's not an arrow pointing to where we're broken. It's an arrow pointing to where there is healing, where there is depth. Wherever the worthiness wound exists for you in your life, that's a gift, inviting you to deepen into your greatest self. I believe that the best way to healing is through the wound, not over it. I love that Finding Nemo scene where the fishes tell the father and Dory to go through the trenches, but the father, Merlin I think his name is, right? He looks at the trench and he's like, way too dark, that looks way too scary, we're gonna swim over it. We're going to swim over it. And so they swim over it, and what happens? They encounter jellyfishes, and they get stung a lot, and they barely survive. I think that tells us a lot about the fact that it's the fear of the darkness that is scarier than the darkness itself. And I'm going to explore tomorrow about what is shadow work. I'm going to demystify some of the shadow stuff. But let me tell you what, it is not as scary as you think. It's actually deeply, deeply liberating. So I'm going to talk tomorrow about how we can begin to navigate shadow and our shadow work, our shadow sides. So stay tuned for that. That's coming out tomorrow. I'm really excited about this series. I'm really excited to continue to share my thoughts on worthiness with you all. This is really potent stuff, and I take it really deep. So thank you for being with me on this journey. And if you have any questions at all, or if you have any insights, or if you want to share your myth of the ideal woman with me, please do so. Do so on Instagram, do so on Facebook. You can use the hashtag reclaim the podcast, or you can use the hashtag worthy women rise. I will find it. I will say you can tag me at I am Thais Sky on Instagram. Share it with me. And I can't wait to see what you come up with, because the more that we can start to name the myths, the more we get to start to see it and demystify it, the less hold it has in our lives. So if you're going to do any homework today, you don't even have to, it doesn't have to be that formal. Just start thinking about the myths that you see around you, around what it means to be a woman. Okay? And I look forward to hearing from you on the social media, on the social. And I will see you tomorrow for part 2 of Reclaiming Your Worth series.